Feelings can be so strong that it is extremely difficult to fight the craving, but sometimes the inability to control yourself leads to a slippery slope. Some stories, like today's, resemble a voluntary movement towards death, like a moth and a candle flame. Christina Robinson was born on August 19, 1989, in South Bend, Indiana, USA. Christina's mother was 18 years old when she gave birth to her. The heroine of the story was the firstborn of her parents. Then, 2 more girls and 2 boys were born. The heroine of the story grew up in a large family. It is not surprising that from an early age, she formed a vision of an ideal life in marriage and with many children. However, even in elementary school, problems began in the family, which gradually led to her father leaving the family. Christina dreamed of avoiding the mistakes of her parents and creating a complete family. But even in her school years, she learned what adult life was. She met a guy who was older and became pregnant. Despite her young age, the girl decided to keep the child. Her first daughter was born when she was only 16 years old. The baby's father turned out to be a bad father, so he simply abandoned his girlfriend and child. Her mother's life followed a similar scenario when Christina's father left the family. She saw how her mother spent her life and gave all her strength to raising her children. Christina understood how difficult it would be for her. She realized that only thanks to these efforts she was able to fulfill her dreams, despite her early age. It is not surprising that, despite the difficulties, she firmly decided to become a good mother, and she succeeded, according to her relatives who saw how hard she tried, given her young age for motherhood. When the heroine of the story turned 17, she met a 33-year-old man named Troy Woods. He worked in a store not far from the schoolgirl's home. The girl herself took the initiative and went for rapprochement. It is worth noting that she was always attracted to older men. But even against this background, Troy seemed too grown up, twice her age. Despite the age difference and her mother's warning, they found a common language and began to communicate. Gradually, this developed into a romantic relationship. The couple got married on November 14, 2007, when Christina turned 18. A year later, Christina became pregnant again. On April 21, 2009, the first tragedy in the life of the heroine of the story occurred. Her daughter, named Lillian, died. The baby was found to have abnormalities, due to which the girl did not survive. During this period, Christina was very worried and tried to find a response in her husband. However, this turned out to be difficult. Troy was a rather tough, cold person with a conservative mindset, did not show his emotions. Christina became the mother of 4 children. Their names were Haley, Sierra, Kira, and Anthony. Relatives, acquaintances, and friends describe her as a very friendly and cheerful person. She literally exuded motherly love towards her children. Troy, however, sought to control everything. But this was met with resistance from his young wife. He needed a woman who would constantly be at home and do housework. Due to her young age, Christina was not well suited for this. She was still looking for her place in life. She wanted to have fun with friends, sometimes go to parties, be free from total control. Troy tried to drive her into everyday life, housework endlessly. In turn, the girl's behavior irritated her adult husband. He constantly took it out on her, humiliated her, clung to every little thing. After all the events in the life of the married couple, one night they had another conflict, which was provoked out of the blue. It all came to blows. Troy beat his wife for the first time. She did not tolerate this and went to the police. When the patrolman arrived, the man tried to justify himself and blame his wife. But nothing came of it, as the heroine of the story had her face broken. Eventually, the man was detained, and Christina decided it was time to move on and break up with her husband. But this only led to new quarrels when her husband was released. Troy behaved inappropriately, tried to follow his wife, and even threatened her several times when meeting her in the city. As a result, Christina went to court to get a restraining order against him. Despite this, the man continued to regularly violate the restrictions, was even detained several times. However, this did not entail any serious punishment. In the fall of 2017, Christina was diagnosed with cancer. The disease was detected in the early stages, so the young mother could be saved by surgery. After Christina suffered it, she ended up on bed rest. During this period, Troy again began to show increased interest in Christina, tried to make peace with her and live again as one big family. However, she has stated more than once that she does not perceive the man as anything other than the father of her children. The young woman simply wanted him to communicate with them, but did not want to restore marital relations. At this time, the hero of the story gradually rehabilitated after the surgery and was at home. She was constantly visited by relatives and friends. Her mother especially often dropped by, as well as her two best friends, whose names were Gina and Brooke. The second of them often came with her husband Daniel. Brooke and Christina met at an early age. In fact, they grew up together, were inseparable for most of their lives. This allowed them to form a very strong friendship. In fact, the young women treated each other like members of the same family. One of these evenings, the mother heroine of the story came to look after Christina, planning to stay the night. Here, unexpectedly for herself, she found Daniel. At that time, the mother did not attach much importance to this, since he often came with his wife. Perhaps he just stopped by to give some gifts from a friend. But the longer the woman was here, the stranger his behavior seemed. Firstly, Brooke was not here. Secondly, he did not leave after the woman said that she would look after Christina, and he could go free. Dan even stayed the whole night, and this did not look like a friendly visit at all. The next morning, the mother heroine of the story accidentally met her best friend Brooke. She was very worried about Dan's behavior. She asked her friend daughter why her husband freely came to Christina in her absence and could stay in the house all night. Brooke did not know what to answer. In fact, she had no idea that this was happening. Brooke had long suspected her husband of cheating and was shocked that all this time he had been having an affair on the side with his best friend. Deceived and extremely dissatisfied, she immediately went to the house of the heroine of the story to tell her everything. Brooke felt betrayed not only by her beloved husband, but also by a close person with whom she practically grew up. Brooke came to Christina and made a scandal. Christina confessed to her friend that she had been in a relationship with Dan for the past 10 years. Under the guise of a friendly relationship with her best friend, the heroine of the story had fun with her husband behind her back and was not even going to end it. This confession angered Brooke. Christina's ex-husband Troy quickly found out about this conflict. The man realized that for a significant part of their life together, she had also cheated on him, so he decided to take this opportunity to fight for full custody of his children, citing the fact that he was worried about the well-being of his daughters and son because of his dysfunctional mother. But from the very beginning, the heroine's family and friends understood that the real goal of obtaining full custody was to cause maximum pain to the ex. Despite loud conflicts and the revelation of the truth, the relationship with Daniel continued. A real love triangle was formed. Since the spring of 2018, the man cohabited with Brooke, then with Christina. Often, he chose one woman while there was a conflict with the other. He returned as soon as disagreements with the other one began. Both knew about it, but for some reason tolerated what was happening. No one dared to take the first step to break this vicious relationship. Of course, this provoked even greater conflicts. The friends finally fell out. There were constant quarrels between them. It even came to fights. In May 2018, Dan and Christina once again spent time together. The woman insisted that he should be with her and leave Brooke. By this time, this topic had already completely started to piss the man off. Another argument arose, which escalated into physical violence, and this was such aggressive behavior that Christina ended up in the hospital. She received a mild concussion, but even after that she did not break off the relationship, apparently continuing to hope for a reunion with her friend's husband. The situation reached an extreme point, which led to an imminent tragedy. During this period, she was constantly communicating with her ex-husband, Troy, who was trying in every possible way to achieve full custody of his children. Christina smoothed out the tense moments, and it seemed that the man was behaving adequately. In early June 2018, both of them went to an amusement park with their children. Here they wanted to ride the carousel with the children. Against the background of disagreements with Dan and her best friend, the relationship with her ex-husband became noticeably better, but he did not abandon the idea of getting more custody rights. Christina was even glad that she ended up with Troy. She could take a break from the love triangle, devote time to her children, and joint upbringing. On June 9, 2018, 28-year-old Christina went to a meeting with an employer. This was another interview which she had high hopes for, wanting to find a job and stabilize her financial situation. She still largely depended on elements of her ex-husband and the help of her relatives, but she realized that this could not continue forever. She needed to work, become more independent, and build her own career successes that would allow her and the children to stand firmly on their feet. After the interview, Christina called her mother with the good news, saying that she had passed it and got a job. She was on the road and said that she would call her mother a little later when she returned home. The heroine of the story wanted to agree and discuss a meeting with her and her sister, as she wanted to celebrate her employment. It was only a 15 to 20-minute drive by car. The mother was so happy for her daughter and was impatiently waiting for the call. But even an hour later, Christina was silent. The woman became worried and decided that her daughter had gotten distracted and switched to some other things. She had simply forgotten, although this was not like her. So she decided to dial her daughter's number herself. To her surprise, no one answered. Then the woman started writing a text message, tried to get feedback in messengers, but Christina stubbornly ignored everything. The mother continued trying to contact her throughout the day. Finally, in the evening, she decided to contact the police. However, here she was, informed that too little time had passed to consider the person missing. It was about an adult woman who could manage her time as she liked and not report to her mother. The police suggested waiting a day. Then the mother went to her daughter's house to make sure that Christina was okay. But she found no trace of her presence there. It seemed that she never got to her home. The children were also missing. It turned out that they had been with their father Troy all this time. All this caused great concern. But the woman decided to wait until tomorrow, hoping that the situation would soon become clear. The next day, the mother again could not get through to her daughter and contacted the police, filed a missing person report. This time, they accepted it without any discussion. The situation turned out to be really serious, since it was about a responsible person, a mother of 4 children, who had to be in touch and keep an eye on her children. Until that moment, nothing like this had happened. The mother was very worried. It was unlike Christina, especially considering her upcoming return to work and an important meeting planned for the next few days. The strangest thing was that a court hearing was scheduled for June 12, 2018, where a final decision was supposed to be made. Which of the biological parents will have custody rights? However, the missing girl never showed up. The mother, the heroine of the story, went to this hearing because she wanted to support her daughter. To her great regret, Troy came to the courthouse alone. The man talked to Christina's mother, but had no idea what was going on. This completely threw the woman off balance. She understood that her daughter would not miss this important event under any circumstances. She planned to retain custody rights, but her absence from the hearing put everything in question. That same day, her stepfather received a strange message from Christina. She wrote that she was in trouble and needed help. She asked him to pick her up. The man told the missing woman's mother about all this. She became worried and waited for details on what to do. But instead, 2 hours later, the stepfather received another message that she was fine and should not tell her mother about it. At that moment, the relatives finally became convinced that something bad had happened to Christina. At that time, the police were already actively conducting a search and rescue operation and also hoped that the missing woman would appear in court. Now the suspicions and confidence that she had become a victim of some criminal were only confirmed. No trace of the woman could be found. Law enforcement officers began to delve deeper into the difficult history of Christina's life and relationships. From the very beginning, the ex-husband was the main suspect, as they had a long history of tense relations and even threats. A serious dispute over custody, and the man had a strong motive to get rid of his ex-wife. But despite this, he was one of the few who cooperated with the investigation at that time. Neither Brooke's ex-best friend nor her husband Daniel expressed any interest in finding Christina. The police had serious suspicions against this couple as well. In the end, it was possible to prove that Troy was not involved. The man had an alibi, which was confirmed by several people. At the time of Christina's disappearance, he spent time with the children and was in sight all the time. In addition, he actually seemed concerned about the situation with his ex-wife. Despite their differences, Troy did not want the children to be left without a mother. The man wanted to achieve full custody, rather because Christina's life at that time was similar to chaos. So he wanted to protect the children from such a disorderly life. It seemed that Christina did not lose hope to take her husband away from her friend Brooke, despite the resistance that came from both of them. The family of her lover, Daniel Lynn, owned a house in St. Louis County, Minnesota. The investigation checked the heroine's mobile phone data, and it turned out that this house was the last place where the missing girl's mobile phone was located. Curiously, this was a large area. It had been abandoned for the past 5 years. The owners rarely came here to keep the property in decent condition. Detectives went to this place to check if there were any traces of Christina on this territory. Around the house, everything seemed familiar for an abandoned property. But as soon as the officers looked into the windows, alarming suspicions immediately arose. Despite the fact that the house had been uninhabited for many years, as stated by all members of Dan's family, even through the slightly open window, a strong smell of cleaning products was clearly felt. They had clearly been used recently. On the kitchen table lay gloves that are usually used for working with caustic liquids. Neighbors said that they had recently noticed suspicious activity near the abandoned house. There were several cars parked there from June 11th to June 15th. Investigators checked the records of bank transfers and purchases made by Daniel in recent days. It turned out that shortly before Christina's disappearance, he purchased a large amount of cleaning products and protective equipment identical to those seen in the house. The police went to the hardware store and requested CCTV footage. As it turned out, the man was not alone that day. Brooke was with him. They both looked tense. These guesses were confirmed by the store clerk, who served suspicious customers. It seemed to him that the woman was barely holding back. Her eyes darted around. Brooke was clearly very nervous. By June 28, 2018, Christina had been missing for almost 3 weeks. The police finally received a search warrant for the abandoned Daniel family home. Despite suspicions, nothing of interest to the investigation was found inside. All possible evidence was carefully erased with cleaning products. The detectives' attention was drawn to a large fire pit, in which they found many objects that they had tried to destroy with fire. Among them were parts of a mobile phone, a bracelet, a button, jeans, and several other unidentified melted fragments. The most valuable item was a coin from a carousel with the inscription, "From an amusement park." This was the very park where Christina spent time with her ex-husband and children shortly before her disappearance. Troy confirmed all of this. Probably, the missing person's things were burned. The coincidence could not be accidental. Nevertheless, the information needed to be verified to exclude any speculation. Finally, on July 2, 2018, the police conducted a full inspection of the house and the adjacent area. 24 days had passed since the disappearance of the heroine of the story. Investigators examined almost every inch of the territory. Disturbed earth was discovered far from the fire. When they dug it up, it turned out to be a grave dug, especially for Christina. The woman's body was wrapped in a blanket and tied with ropes in a fetal position. According to the police, this was done so that the victim would fit into a smaller hole that would not attract much attention. The victim's body had multiple injuries, including a broken hyoid bone, indicating strangulation. It looked like she was killed by hand. After the autopsy, the medical examiner confirmed that she had been beaten for quite a long time, during which she received serious injuries. However, the cause of death was strangulation. After this, detectives requested an arrest warrant for 40-year-old Daniel Lynn. However, the man was not going to give up and went on the run. There were no leads on his whereabouts. After this, the police tried to find Brooke, but it turned out that she had also disappeared. Could she have escaped with her husband, or was she the next victim of the criminal? By the evening of the same day, an anonymous witness contacted the police station, indicating that Daniel had gone to a trailer park located several hundred kilometers from his home. He also knew that the main suspect could have really dealt with his mistress, since Daniel himself admitted to this after she disappeared. The police went to the indicated location, but by that time the fugitives had disappeared again. Witnesses were found who confirmed their presence there. Local residents pointed to the trailer in which they stayed. In the trash can, detectives found a receipt for a gas station located several kilometers away. Here, on surveillance footage, they saw Brooke and Daniel entering the store together. They were holding hands. It was obvious that Brooke was not a victim of kidnapping. She was going with her husband voluntarily. On July 3, 2018, Brooke showed up unexpectedly. She was immediately detained and taken to the station. She said that Daniel called her in the middle of the night on the day of Christina's disappearance. The man asked his wife to bring tools and some things from home, claiming that the basement of the family farm was flooded, and he should go there to fix everything. According to her, when she brought all this to Daniel, she found Christina there. Brooke admitted that they had another argument, which led to a fight. According to her, she simply watched what was happening, not wanting to interfere. In anger, Daniel hit Christina so hard that she fell and lost consciousness. After that, the man allegedly took his wife outside, and he took a shovel and returned to the house. She went to the car and simply waited for her husband to show up. He was gone for too long, and when her husband returned, he was out of breath and covered in dirt. Brooke claimed that she had nothing to do with what happened. She did not kill her rival, but she was sure that Daniel killed and buried Christina on his property. She could not name the exact location, claiming that she was not involved in the process at all, did not see anything. Brooke said that she did not know where Daniel was now. They did not see each other again. The detectives did not tell her that her friend's body had already been found, but simply listened to the story, hoping to latch onto the suspect's lies and inconsistencies. But there were few of them. After that, they simply sent her home, asking her to contact the police station if she noticed or learned anything new about her missing friend. All this was presented as if the murdered woman's friend was above suspicion, as if they believed her. In fact, after that, they closely watched her and noticed that she regularly visited the same trailer park, where her parents owned a small house. Brooke had previously claimed that she did not know where Daniel was, but they were seen together on the gas station's surveillance cameras. This meant that they ran away together, but perhaps they broke up after that. The detectives decided to check the suspect's words. When she came to the trailer park again, Brooke was already there. The investigators followed her inside the trailer. Daniel was here. Both immediately refused to cooperate with the police and demanded a lawyer. There was no resistance. The suspects were arrested. The most questionable thing was Brooke's possible involvement in the murder. Traces of Daniel's DNA were found on Christina's body, but this did not mean that he did everything alone. The wife could also have beaten the victim, helping to get rid of the body, as well as clean up the scene of the massacre. It was so thoroughly cleaned that no evidence could be found. According to Brooke, Christina's relationship with Daniel was developing according to an undesirable scenario. He regularly beat his mistress, but she forgave him time after time because of strong feelings. She repeatedly admitted this to a member of her family. Because of strong feelings, she did not want to break off the relationship. Christina simply hoped that now that she had become financially independent, she would soon resolve the problems with her husband and be able to improve her relationship with Daniel. But these dreams were not destined to come true. Everything led to murder. They were both interrogated, but no one could be brought to heel. Brooke insisted that Christina had provoked the aggression herself, as was always the case, so her husband lost his temper. Dan simply refused to cooperate with the investigation. His lawyer insisted that the prosecutor's office did not have sufficient grounds to bring charges. But he was wrong. The reason why Christina was killed remained a mystery. Her former best friend insisted on her innocence. The defense really had a good chance of fighting for the suspect's freedom. 40-year-old Dan was being held on $1 million bail, which he was never able to post, so he was behind bars. Detectives did not have sufficient grounds to charge him with first-degree murder. To avoid impunity for Daniel, the man was offered to cooperate with the prosecution. Daniel agreed to confess to second-degree murder, for which the maximum prison term was 40 years. After the deal, the criminal received 16 years in prison. 28-year-old Brooke pleaded guilty to harboring a criminal, which also allowed her to avoid a jury trial. To the surprise of Christina's mother and everyone who cared about the fate of the heroine of the story, she received only a year in prison. In fact, she admitted that she watched the process of reprisal against her best friend and did not help her. However, the prosecutor's office never received the necessary evidence to consider the woman involved in the crime. After serving her sentence, she continued to maintain a relationship with Daniel. Christina's family was shocked. Even her ex-husband, Troy, spoke negatively about the leniency of the punishment. But the relatives were never able to get the court's decision reviewed. Everyone was forced to come to terms with what happened, despite the fact that their mother was taken away from 4 children. Christina's eldest daughter, Haley, who was 15 at the time, remained to live with her maternal grandmother. The other 3 children moved to live with their father. In an interview after the trial, the victim's mother said she did not want her daughter to be remembered as a victim of crime or violence, because she was, first and foremost, a wonderful mother, daughter, and sister. She fought for a long time to have the court's decision reviewed and the punishment increased. But it never led to success.